Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, I can hear you fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Doing well.
Good. So I think we'll probably do this in two separate sessions. One is just to go over what I do in a demo with the goal of you being able to do demos. And I'll record it and make it available to you. And the other part is to learn, to see whether I can set you up as an administrator and then teaching you how to use the administrator's user interface, which is, it works perfectly well, but it's a little clunky. So, of course, you may think everything is clunky. So this is clunkier. Okay, so let me do a screen share.
All right.
And where is it? Here we go. All right. You see OLW?
Mhm.
All right. Okay. So what I usually do, I mean, in this case, we don't have a user interface for them, but I usually tell them about how you can switch books as you or OLW's user interface to different languages.
Oh, Spanish is an option. Good.
Yeah. And also that if someone wants, we can set them up to translate the user interface, and it's really easy to do that. So let me go back to English. One problem I ran into when I was in Mexico, it was a Greek priest assigned to the Greek Archdiocese of Mexico. And he was using something that caused all of the pages to be translated into Greek. And the problem was, it was also attempting to translate the liturgical Greek into modern Greek. And I was scratching my head because he was saying, oh, something's really wrong. And I was checking all this stuff, and then finally it dawned on me, he was using a page translator in his browser, and it was messing up the liturgical Greek. He was just seeing it as a supposed translation.
Right.
So anyway, so what I usually do is I start by showing them the search, and I explained that we have all of the liturgical text in a database, the source text, meaning the Greek, and various translations. And let me ask you a question. Do you know, is this guy, does he know anything about Greek?
I don't know how much he knows about Greek at this point. He is translating from English and Spanish into Portuguese. So I know he's not translating from Greek.
Or Arabic.
But I don't, or Arabic, but I don't know I don't know what familiarity he has with Greek.
Okay. So you're familiar with the search, so I don't really need to go over that very much. But it is important when we do this to explain how there are different libraries.
Yeah.
And can you tell me where these codes come from?
Where they come from?
Yeah.
As opposed to what they mean?
Well, it will be related to what they mean, but yeah, where they come from.
Where
They come from ISO, the International Standards Organization.
Okay.
And they are responsible for maintaining internationally language codes and country codes, among other things.
Oh, so the EN_US is a standard.
It's an International Standards Organization, ISO standard.
For
Yeah.
US English.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first, and you know what the first code is, right?
The EN_US is, US English.
Well, the first part is the language code, and the second part is the country
second
code.
part is the country.
And then the third part is what is called a realm. And whereas the first two parts, the language code and the country code, are governed by ISO, the third part is totally arbitrary. And it can mean, it could be a person's name, like, their last name, or in this case, OCA, it could be an archdiocese, it could be a metropolis, it could be a specific parish. So it's totally flexible. But the point being that that these three components, the language code, the country code, and the realm, make up what we call a domain, or also a library is another word that we often use for it.
Okay.
And then of course, the next part, Manan, month 2, day 21. And Father Seraphim then went through and uniquely identified each block of text and created a identifier for them, an ID, and an ID is composed of library, topic, and key, the combination of all three of those things. So this first part's called the topic, and then the third part's the key. And I do discuss that in the help. When you go scroll down towards the bottom, there's help on the database. So then what I do is I go ahead and I click on a row and point out to them that here's the original Greek, and here's two different translations. And the key concept here is that the topic and key are exactly the same for all three of these, and what varies is the library. And so that means that just by changing the library, we can identify the same text across libraries by keeping the topic and key the same.
Right.
And sometimes I will go ahead and show them how to use this, click on a token and stuff. But I think if it's for a translator, we might wait until we get to the editor. So I go ahead and close this, and then I'm going to log in here. And I'm logging in using the universal admin account. And I'm hoping that I can set you up as a global admin rather than just giving you the WS admin credentials. But if we have to, do you use a password administrator or password manager?
Yeah.
What do you use?
Yeah. LastPass.
I'm sorry?
It's called LastPass.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Yeah, I use 1Password. And there's a new feature in 1Password where you can securely share a password with someone else. So if we have to, then I think we'll try that. You don't have to have 1Pass to retrieve the information. Okay, and then I point out that after you log in, you have access to all kinds of other features. And because I logged in with an administrator account, I have the admin option. And see, then what I generally do is I go to generate. Oh, actually, before I do anything else, I always go to DCS and explain to them how Father Seraphim-Dides was Typikarios at a monastery on Mount Athos. He was there for 16 years. And when he came back to the States, he was the abbot of a monastery in Ohio. And he worked, starting there, on creating PDF files for matins, including the variable parts, and had it on a website called ematins.org. And all it had was Sunday matins. And he said it took him 3 weeks of every month to prepare the next month's set.
Right.
And now, using the software that I created for him, he often generates 4 to 6 months in advance. And every day of the month. And also, what's the date? 15th. So for, let's just pick Friday, for example. Well, he has matins, divine liturgy, and readings and vespers. And sometimes you'll see he even has hours.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why he decides whether or not to have hours. Well, here's midnight offices here in matins. And that the software that generates this website was created to work for any language as spoken in any country for any jurisdiction. He happens to use it just for English and Greek and English for the Greek Archdiocese in the United States, but it can be used for any language in any jurisdiction in any country. We just have to have the translations in the database. And then, you know, I mean, you're used to using this, so you can explain this to him.
Yes, and Deacon Paulo, he uses the DCS as one of the sources for the English that he's translating from.
Oh,
So
okay,
he's
good.
obviously familiar with it as well.
Excellent. And but you also want to point out that it's possible to have their own music.
Yes.
If they have their own musical scores, their own recordings, that's possible too. Not when Vox is available, we'll be able to do that. So, okay, back to OLW. So the thing that OLW does that Aegis Liturgical Workbench doesn't is that we can generate ad hoc services in languages other than Greek and English by using the database and by reusing information that is in the templates, I mean the HTML files in the GoArch DCS. And so that's why it says view a service or sacrament from the GoArch DCS website. So we select the service that we want, and there's 2 types of files, or 2 types of web pages available to use as templates. There's dated services, which have the variable parts, but there are also the fixed text. So like if he wanted to start with the mysteries or the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom or St. Basil without the variable parts, then in either the date or the day of the week, you can type any and it filters them for what are essentially books instead of services. So you can see we have the mysteries, we have the great and small water blessing, blessing of the loaves, and the liturgy. We also have paraklasis. We have the typica. We have from the Irmologian. I think we've got, what else do we have? I don't think there's anything in here. Let me try that really quickly, and let's just see what we get. So anyway, when you select something, you have an option of combinations of languages. So in Portugal, I don't know what languages they would want to use side by side, or if they just want Portuguese, in Brazil, whether they just want Portuguese, but I'll just add in here Spanish.
Totally, yeah.
And see, there's lots of Spanish in here. And what you want to pick, though, is the one for Guatemala, if you demonstrate this. And a new feature that I just added recently is you can say no fallback. The idea of a fallback is that if your translation doesn't exist, it'll fall back to some other translation. At the moment, all you can, in this, an OLW, all you can say is English, Greek, or no fallback. And then click on Get the Service. And you've seen this, so you're familiar with it. So what it's done is it's read the HTML file that we selected and extracted information from it to make on the fly a template, and then regenerated it for these combinations of languages.
Yeah.
And then I show them how, so Voxa, when it's available, they will be able to generate the entire website just like Digital Chant Stand, but that's not ready yet. And so in the meantime, what they can do is they can create PDF files of services with their translation. Now, sometimes it can take a minute or so for the PDF to generate. So if you click on here and there's nothing there, just refresh it, and then try a few times and you'll get it. And these PDFs then can be saved through the browser. And if someone has a website, they can put them on there, or they can distribute them by email to other people. And they can be viewed on a tablet or a smartphone, or they can be printed, hard copy. I've seen both done, for example, in Nairobi. People will print the PDFs, or they will view them on a smartphone. And then after showing them that, I go over to generate edit using Go Arch DCS. And so now let's say they were going to work on, they wanted to work on the liturgy of St. Basil. So you can filter using the top row there. And then you select that. And then you select your library that you're working from. And if they have an account, they will have a personal library, but you can also set up an account that's for their archdiocese. And because if their translations are going to be reviewed and used for the whole archdiocese, then you want a second library, one that's for the archdiocese, and you will tell them then to use the Archdiocese library that they have access to, not their personal library. And then what I do is I pick any example. So, like I'm picking Swahili here, and select your translation library. It's where you're going to put your translations. And we're pretending like I'm doing Swahili.
Yep.
And then what I like to point out is how different parts of the liturgical text appear over and over, like Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. But the database only stores it once.
Right.
And so then what I do is I show them, here's how you edit your text, your translation. You double click in the middle and you can see all of these different translations that are available. So any that you happen to know. Which reminds me, I need to make an enhancement for Voc so that you can mark which languages you're interested in rather than seeing necessarily all these languages.
What's the language that's Udan Were Rehme, KMR?
Where was that?
Go down. KMR.
I believe that is Kurdish.
Sorry.
All
this must be Cherokee that I'm looking at.
yeah, this is Cherokee. And Slavonic, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. Indonesian. If you, as an administrator, you can go in and you can see, you can look these up and see what they are. Korean. Okay, so in my demo, what I do is I copy this so that I don't lose it. And then I show them, if I want to put my own translation in, I can do that and then hit submit. And now it's updated at every place it occurred. And this is important for two reasons. Number one is it saves time. And number two, well, three reasons. Number two is that when you translate the same thing over and over, often you forget how you translated it before and you make it slightly different. And we've even seen that with Father Ephraim Lash. And then the third reason it's important is because if you have to make a correction, you only do it in one place.
Yeah.
And then it is updated everywhere it's used. So you don't have to search for every book, every service that uses that and update it. Okay, then what I like to do is give a demonstration of how you can make or the tools for translators. And usually I pull up the template for theophany to show them. And if you have admin rights, you would be able to get to it use it as well. But the reason I do it is because it's making use of all the features. And when I do that, I use GEV. Get that service. And then I just, it could be any of these. Well, actually, it has to be either the first one or down in Ode 9. But if you pick the first one, so again, you have the Greek and you have all the different English translations that happen to be available. Here's where the translator puts in their translation. And then I show how you can make notes about translation. And so you can create commentary for other people, or as a translator, there's a type of note that you can make that's called a translator's note, where you can explain why you translated it the way you did. And then I pick one of these and I show them how there's an editor here and you can format it, bold, italics, underline, and you can even add a hyperlink in there if you want to. And let's see, because I'm logged in as admin, I can't show you the bibliography feature. But that's what the @ sign is. You can create your own bibliography for your user library, or username, I should say. And then when you do @ it inserts the reference, and when it generates, it'll make a link. I mean, a link in the PDF, and it'll insert it into a bibliography at the end. And I mean, learning how to do notes, that's a whole nother, probably special training for a person. But you can just show them there's different kinds of notes, tons of types of notes. And down here, translator's note is what they would probably want to use if they want to make a note about why they did something a certain way.
Yeah.
And what I do is I take the word or phrase in my translation that I'm going to comment on and make that in the heading. And in the subheading, I use the Greek, the source text, or whatever. And then I take them over to the Grammar Explorer. And the thing is that with the Grammar Explorer, even though we haven't tagged everything yet, you can use the potential analyses. And in this case, Pithmena only has one analysis according to Tufts University Perseus. So noun, singular, masculine, accusative, and the lemma, Pithmin. And if you click into Logian website, it has a link right to it. And so it'll pull up the entry for that. Now, of interest for someone who knows Spanish, we have this one, La Parola. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's Spanish. Not found in the New Testament. Okay. So let's pick something that
pick a word into the New Testament.
Yeah, that one only has let's try Kyrios. We know that'll be in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pick in.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. That's not true. That doesn't make any sense. That absolutely does not make sense. How could that not be? Let's try a preposition.
Yeah.
There.
Okay, but that's not
that's
Spanish.
not Spanish. That's not Spanish. I thought I had Spanish. Oh, I guess I don't. I sure thought this was Spanish. I mean, looking at the name of it, it should be.
Yeah.
Let me go back again.
La Parola.net. Yeah, I mean, I just went on to laparola.net and it's definitely in Spanish. Wait. No, it's in Italian.
Oh, Italian. Okay, never mind. Don't tell them about that then. Oh, well. Bummer. I should have remembered it was Italian. Okay. There's also Smythe or Smith, however it's pronounced. I usually say Smythe, but I heard it's pronounced Smith, so I don't.
All right.
So you can get the information that way. And so just by clicking on words, you can get some information then about what it means. And of course, now the other thing I show them is how in the download you can create a title for your notes and your name and stuff like that. And then you can create files. It generates the PDF. And so because it's me, it's gonna, it does it like I want for the handbook. But you can
Right.
show them what you can do with it. And let's switch now back to books, because like if they picked baptism, for example, there's a lady that works with me in Greece who's been going through and annotating the static text for us. So if I go in here, and I pick this, it actually has the information tagged.
Yeah.
And that's in the token tagger.
Yeah.
The other way that they can look at it is through the dependency diagram. Now this, she isn't doing the syntactic information. So, well, a little bit of it's been done, I see. But they can get for many of the books, the static books, things have been labeled. So hopefully this would be of use.
Yeah.
And then reiterate that after they've entered their translations, they can use the generator then to select their translation. So if this said, if it's the code for Portuguese and for the Orthodox Church in Brazil,
Right.
and they can set, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's do this again. Now, the problem that I have right now with a no fallback is, oh, we haven't selected a service. I'll pick this one. Okay. The problem, it was in Albania, they wanted this no fallback. The problem is if nothing's found, then you wind up, this isn't really showing it, you wind up with empty spaces instead of,
Right.
and if you've got just about everything, then that's not a problem. So they could do Portuguese by itself, or they could add Spanish, but we don't have everything in Spanish, unfortunately. I don't have anybody working diligently to put the Spanish in. And one of the problems, one of the problems.
What we probably, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, finish.
What we probably need to do, what the Antiochian Archdiocese in Brazil, from what I've learned of it, and of course it'll be useful far beyond the Antiochian Archdiocese in Brazil, is we need to get Arabic into the database. Because the most parishes in Brazil use almost exclusively Arabic. And so Portuguese is going to be in addition to Arabic. So they would want
Gotcha.
to, I assume the bilingual text they would want would be Portuguese and Arabic.
So that's actually something to hit them up with, that it would be great if someone would start putting Arabic in.
Yeah. I can probably figure out who I might be able to talk to in the Antiochian Archdiocese here about that.
Oh,
Because there's,
okay.
I mean, we have a subdeacon who's creating PDFs, probably the way Father started the Antiochian.org website. And if the right people could be convinced to use Online Liturgical Workstation, they'd probably find that the work got a lot easier.
Yeah. So in the United States, does the Antiochian Archdiocese use the Typicon of Constantinople or a different one?
It's the Violakis Typicon. Is that what you're asking?
Well, is it different than the U.S. Greek Archdiocese Typicon?
It's not always completely identical, but it's Constantinople and Antioch both use the Violakis Typicon as opposed to the Saint Sava Typicon. Each has its own slight variations.
See, I didn't know. I've never heard of. Can you put it in the chat window? Yeah.
Yeah. Give me a second. There we go.
It's not in the chat.
I'm working on it. It
okay.
autocorrected Typicon to Typhoon.
Okay.
So the Typicon is the one used by Jerusalem and by Moscow and a number of other churches. Violakis is the one used by Constantinople, Greece, Antioch, Alexandria. I'm not sure who else.
Well, what's interesting about what you just said is even though, according to what you said, Greece uses the Violakis Typicon and Constantinople does, the Typicon of Greece is actually different.
Yeah, there are still slight variations between each jurisdiction, but there are more significant variations between them.
So what we lack in OLW is the ability to customize templates.
Yeah.
For
I guess the most relevant difference is in Matins on Sunday. In a Greek church, the gospel comes in the middle of the canon, I think, or towards the end of the canon, right before the ninth ode. And it comes in some weird place. And in an Antiochian church, the Matins gospel comes much earlier in the service.
Okay.
And that there are other very minor differences that are above my pay grade, but that's the one that you really notice, because in a Greek church, Monday through Saturday, if there's a Matins gospel, it comes earlier in the service. It's just on Sunday that the Matins gospel is delayed until later in the service.
Wow.
And in the Antiochian patriarchates, that delaying of the Matins gospel for Sunday Matins is not something that has been done.
Okay.
So there are issues like that.
So the biggest obstacle that I've faced with people using OLW is when they realize that what's generated doesn't exactly fit their typicon.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But what I try to convince them of is that between now and the time that doxa is ready, which is like 18 months out, that it's
Right.
time well spent to be putting in the translations.
Yes. So
And of course,
doxa
there's the
will,
tools.
you've already said this, right? Doxa will be able to handle variations in the typicon.
Yes, I mean, ALWB is also able to handle it, but you have to install Java, you have to install Eclipse, you have to install Xtext. You have to learn how to pull in all of the different projects for the different libraries and for the templates. And you have to have a very powerful computer and at least 16 gig of memory and blah, 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 blah. And so that's why doxa, it's just, you know, single executable, everything there, it'll be simpler.
Good.
And yeah. So this is what I show them and try to encourage them. If they were able to make use of the services the way they are, then what I would encourage people to do is what I call just-in-time translation. And what that means is that because Father Seraphim puts things out months in advance, you pick a future month as your starting point. And so you have several months of working ahead of time on translations. And then when the month comes around, you're ready to go. And the next month you're ready to go. So just in time translation.
Yeah.
Versus translating book by book.
Right.
And, you know, even though I show them how you only translate things once and they get reused, I've noticed later light bulbs going on. They didn't quite get it. They think, I mean, the thing is that, like, if you translate, well, let me give you an example. Let's just pick, if we go to generate and I pick baptism, no one has entered the translations for baptism for Spanish. But I'm gonna pick Spanish Guatemala, and I'm gonna generate. And look there, lo and behold.
Yep.
So, you know, here the baptismal prayers, nobody's translated them yet, but there's still quite a bit in there. And the more people work on things, the less work it becomes over time.
Since we're looking at these texts right where you were, or any of the exorcisms, do you know, like if you scroll down to the first exorcism, for example, there we go. Scroll up a little bit to the title of the exorcism. There we yeah. So in the Bible, I think I remember this word that we translate as exorcism is exorcismos. But in the service of baptism, it's aphorkismos. Do you have any idea about this word aphorkismos, like the history of that, or?
Well, not off the top of my head, but let's look at,
okay.
Let's go over here in the editor. Oops. see what we can find out about this. Orphokismos.
I mean, it's the prefix is, apo, so it's away from as opposed to ex, out of.
It may not be finding
It's a
it
word-
simply because
yeah,
it's
it's a
capitalized.
No, it's a word that I can't find anywhere other than in the service of Holy Baptism.
Well, that's probably true.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just the question of why did this particular word seem to have been created as opposed to the existing Greek word exorkismos.
I have
it's an interesting question. Yeah.
So I have this.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow.
It's a 2-volume set. Let me just see if it happens to say anything about it. Well, that's interesting. Aphros means foaming. I don't know if it has any relationship.
No, the prefix
Orphokismos.
is a version of apo, right? The preposition apo. or
Okay.
So it's apo orkismos as opposed to exo orkismos.
Okay. So let me try looking at orkismos then. Oh, the other thing is I have little kittle, kittle or not?
Liddell?
Kittle.
No, I don't know kittle.
It's the full kittle is a huge, like 10 or 12 volume analysis of Greek words.
Wow.
And you can get little kittle, meaning the small version of kittle.
Right.
I can look in there too, but I'll do that offline. But let's see. Kismos.
Yeah, it's from orkizo, to adjure, to make somebody swear.
Yeah, there's nothing in there, but I'll look later and see if I can find anything in Kittle about it.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's perplexing why, for the baptism service, the choice was made to use this word with a different prefix than exorcism, right? So in some technical sense, it's not an exorcism, it's an aporcism, right? It's so that's a slight difference between the meaning of apo and exo.
That
Sorry,
might be,
that was my tangent.
Yeah, that might be a really good thing to ask the in your Bible translation course, see what they have to say.
Yeah.
I mean, the Orthodox ones. Are all the people teaching Orthodox, or?
I don't know right now. The first the course this semester, the teacher, Dr. Crisp, is Orthodox. Yeah. I don't know whether every teacher in every unit will be. Probably though.
Well, let's see.
Yeah.
So Little Kittle, I was going to do it offline, but I was able to bring it up. They don't have an entry on it at all.
Yeah.
In this, I suppose if I had the full Kittle, then it might have it. So I don't know.
No worries.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are the things I cover in a demonstration.
Okay.
And in order to create an account for someone, we have to identify their language. And for Portuguese, that's pretty straightforward, but for languages in Africa, you got to do quite a bit of digging, and I go to the ethnologue and looking at, and it used to be you could use it freely, but now they have it kind of locked down as subscription. But I happen to own the volumes. I own it. So.
Yeah, I used to use the ethnologue in graduate school 15 years ago, and yeah, there was no subscription at that point, but I haven't used it much since then.
Yeah.
Okay.
If people wanted to work on books rather than service meaning with the variable parts,
right?
We could probably create some templates for them. It would be, I mean, I'd have to do some work on it, but the thing is, you have to know what the differences are.
Right. Yeah, I have a good friend from seminary who is Antiochian, and he often chants in Greek parishes, and for a while he was the Typikaris for Holy Cross.
Oh wow!
So he knows the Antiochian and GOA Typica quite well. He's
Okay.
probably a good resource for what are the differences.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, if we knew the differences, then I could show you how to do it too. What we would do is we would take the HTML pages for the books, and we would edit those, make a new set. And then I'd set up OLW to also look at those when it's reading.
I see. Cool.
Oh, it'd be nice when books is done.
Looking forward to it. All right. Well, I'm Deacon Paul seems to be really excited about this. We've chatted a bit on WhatsApp, text messages. So
Mhm.
other than the fact that our Brazilian parishioner from St. Joseph's, was like, oh, he needs to talk to you. I don't know much about what he's doing or kind of
Okay.
how official what he's doing is, but I'll talk with him more. He's already sent me PDFs of I think he's done Vespers in the first mode. He's working on Matins in the first mode right now. And he knows Byzantine music and is, trying to what's the word? Sets the translations to Byzantine music. So I mean, you think well-versed could be a nice training ground for me in getting good feedback on what I can do that's helpful using OLW and improving the translation.
It seems like a really important project would be getting the Arabic into the database.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think so.
All right. Anything else you can think of?
I don't think so. I'm just missed a phone call, and since it's 5, it's probably Daphne.
Okay.
So I should get going.
Okay, I'll send you a link to the recording.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right.
All
Talk
right.
to you later then.
All right.
Have a good
Okay.
weekend. Bye.
You too.